Hi, and welcome to 10 Things Every Parent Needs to Know About Reading. My name is Dr. Catherine Garforth from Garforth Education, and I am a reading specialist and interventionist. I want to share these 10 facts about reading with you today because many parents come to me looking for answers about reading, and they want to understand why their child is struggling with reading. I feel it is important for parents to know the truth about reading and what the latest research in the science of reading says about it. So, without further ado, let's begin. Reading fact number 1. Reading is not a natural process. Now that may seem like a strange statement, so let's dig a little bit deeper and do a quick review of the history of written language so that you can get a better idea about why I say that reading is not a natural process. So, the first form of written language that we see is hieroglyphics, and these were symbols that were used to represent words or concepts. These began somewhere between 8000 and 3000 BCE. Now, it wasn't until 3000 BCE that alphabetic scripts began to appear. Alphabetic scripts use symbols to represent speech sounds. These alphabetic scripts did not become widespread around the world until about 500 years ago. It wasn't until the invention of the printing press that we would be able to mass produce the written word so that more people had access to it. And at this time, only a small percentage of the population were actually taught how to read, so the majority of people couldn't read these texts. It wasn't until public schools were created that the general population was able to be taught how to read. And if you think about it, even today, there are still millions of people around the world that haven't had the opportunity to learn how to read. When you think of all of that, it's a little easier to understand and accept that our brains are not structured for reading. And our brain hasn't been given the opportunity to evolve into a reading brain. Now, when you look at the science and the studies using MRIs looking at how the brain reads, it shows us that more than just one part of the brain is needed for reading. When we learn how to read, we need to repurpose different parts of our brain so that the brain can use areas that were designed for something else to be used for reading. Now, luckily, the human brain has evolved so that it has the ability to learn and change given the new circumstances and information that it is presented with. Now, in neuroscience, we have given this term the name of neuroplasticity. So this means that our brain is able to change given a certain situation and adapt to what it needs to do. Reading fact number 2, reading books to your child is not enough for them to become strong, confident readers. Now, this is something that you will see in doctor's offices, and letters from your preschool, or any parent groups that you go to. And while reading to your child is a very important time, especially for bonding and showing your child how much joy can come from reading and that it's a pleasurable experience, it's not enough to teach them how to read. And yes, there are a few children that seem to magically learn how to read by just being read to at home, but they are the exception and not the rule. Plus, there are still many important skills these kids need to be taught before they become expert readers. There are many skills that you must learn in order to become a strong and confident reader, and they are not skills that can be developed just by listening to storybooks at home. So, please do spend the time reading to your child at home, but don't be upset if they don't become readers, because it's not enough. Reading fact number 3. If your child struggles with reading, it doesn't mean that you aren't reading enough to them. Now, this is something that parents of struggling readers are told time and time again, and it simply isn't true. Reading is a complex skill that isn't learned by osmosis. If your child is struggling with reading, it means they need to be explicitly taught the essential skills related to reading. These are skills they are not going to be learning by just listening to you read them a book. These skills require some explanation, and unless you are a teacher, you haven't been taught how to do this. So please, don't listen to people when they say the reason why your child is struggling with reading is because you're not reading to them enough at home. You could be reading to them for hours and hours each day, and they would still be struggling with reading these or learning these skills related to reading. It's still important that you do read to your child at home for them to develop a love of the written word. But don't focus on trying to teach them during this time. Focus on the enjoyment. Leave other times for working on the skills related to reading. Reading fact number 4. The worst thing you can do for a child who is having a difficult time with reading is to wait and see. Now, this is something I hear parents saying time and time again when they go to the school and they say that they're concerned about their child's reading. The school will say, well, let's just wait and see what happens. Now, this is some of the worst advice you could be given, because children who are struggling to learn how to read are not going to suddenly get better at it unless the way they are being taught changes. Waiting to see if your child magically learns how to read on their own will only make it that much harder for them to catch up, because the distance between where they are at and where they should be will only get bigger. It is also not that, no, I don't put that in. Reading fact number 5. Early reading interventions are the most successful interventions. If you remember in point number 1, I mentioned the concept of how brains have plasticity, and that is the ability to change and adapt with new information. Well, younger brains are better at this, and they are also designed to learn language. So it is easiest to draw younger children's attention to the sounds within language because it's at the point that their brain is supposed to be learning this information. So, if you work on these skills when your child is young, their brain is designed to be taking in this information. And it also means that they will have less of a gap between where they should be and where they need to be, because their peers are still just learning how to read. Another reason why early interventions are so important is because when they are successful, they will save your child the pain caused by not learning how to read when everybody else did. The pain caused by this can be damaging, and it's something your child will always remember, even once they learn how to read. So it's important that you try to avoid this for them. Reading fact number 6. 60% of high school graduates can only read at a basic reading level. Now you may be wondering if you heard me right. Did I really say that 60% of high school graduates can only read at a basic level? Yes, I did, and it's unacceptable, because it means that they do not have the reading ability to confidently read and follow directions on medication, on information that our government puts out, or the ability to read the newspaper and take everything from what they are reading. And by the way, newspapers are written at the 8th grade level. It means that if these students decide to go to do any post-secondary education, they will struggle with reading the materials and manuals and textbooks they are given in class. Many of these students will have to pay to take college and university courses to learn the skills that they should have learned in high school. Reading fact number 7. Telling a child to look at the pictures and guess what word they think would fit is not an effective reading strategy. I know this is a strategy that your child's teacher may have told you to do when they're doing home reading at home, and it may even have been something that you were taught to do when you were learning how to read. But the problem is, when you ask your child to do this, you are teaching them to use the skills and strategies that poor readers use. You are asking them to guess and take their attention away from the word itself. Instead, you should be asking them to look and focus on the word. Ask them to look at the letters and sound out the word and employ different word level strategies. Reading fact number 8. There is more to reading than just sounding out the words on the page. Learning to read is a complex process. Learning to read is a complex process that begins with getting your child to pay attention to the sounds within a word. Then it includes teaching them the letters of the alphabet and the sounds that they make. This allows you to sound out or decode the words you see on the page. It doesn't take long to figure out that reading the English language isn't actually that simple. But the more you learn about the language and how there are different strategies you can use to find out what the word is, the better off you'll be. Plus, reading is also about understanding what is written, so that you can learn from what you are reading, and this is what is needed in the higher grades of school. Typically, kindergarten to grade 3 focus on teaching your child to read, and from grade 4 and above, the focus moves to learning from what they read. So it's very important that your child becomes a strong and confident reader so they can learn from their reading. Reading fact number 9. There are 5 essential skills related to reading. Over the past 40 years, researchers have made huge leaps in the understanding of reading. When they have taken a look at all this data together, experts have concluded there are 5 essential components related to reading, and that each of these components have a variety of sub-skills within them. These skills are phonological awareness, phonics, reading comprehension, vocabulary, and reading fluency. Phonological awareness has to do with the awareness of the sounds within a spoken language. Phonics teaches the relationship between these speech sounds and the letter or letters that represent them in writing. Vocabulary is one that you're probably familiar with, and it has to do with the knowledge of the meaning of the different words within a language. Reading comprehension has to do with the ability of the reader to understand what they are reading. And the 5th component is fluency. This is the ability to read text in the way it would sound as if it were spoken. All these skills combine together to allow an individual to become a strong, confident, fluent, and advanced reader so that they can understand and learn from what they are reading. Reading fact number 10. There are ways you can support your child's reading development without even opening a book. As you can see from the last fact, there are so many different skills required for becoming a strong and confident reader. Now, a lot of these skills are ones that we can support at home without even opening a book. For example, there are plenty of ways we can help our child with their awareness of the sounds within a spoken language or phonological awareness by just playing word games with them at home. And it is easy to work on expanding your child's vocabulary by making a point of choosing words when you're speaking to them that are more complex and not just using quote-unquote baby talk. So I hope you find a way to work on these at home with your child so you can really help them become strong and confident readers. Now that I have shared these 10 facts about reading, are you wanting to know more? Let me ask you a couple of questions. How would you like to get more information about how reading develops? Would you like to know more about the 5 essential components of reading? And wouldn't it be nice to have the activities you could use to help support your child develop these 5 essential components at home, right at your fingertips? Well, I have created a course just for parents that does just that. It's called A Parent's Guide to Supporting Reading Development. In this course, I take you through the little bit of history of reading and the 5 essential components of reading. I show you how you can practice these skills at home with your child, and I give you the activities to do so. Now, if you want to know more about this course, all you have to do is click on the link below and it will take you to my webpage where you can find out more.